Good afternoon and welcome back to the Good Eggs podcast. My name's Anthony McDermott and today we're joined by a very, very special friend of mine and the first from north of the border, Fiona Donaldson. Welcome to the pod. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. I'm very, very good indeed. Fiona, before we start, then tell us who are you and where you're from?
Okay, I'm Fiona Donaldson. I'm from Edinburgh, Scotland. I've come from a social enterprise background. I ran one for 5 years, and since then I've been involved from trustee perspective, freelance perspective, and just a friend of social enterprise founders across the world.
Love it, absolutely love it. And that's exactly why we've got you on the show. Fiona is a good egg. I met Fiona about 2-3 months ago. She told me her story, I heard her passion. She told me lots of the various projects that she was involved with, but probably not them all. So I thought I want to get her on. I want to hear that passion coming through. I want to hear her story and hear all about how Fiona got to where she did today. So let's get into it. So, Fiona, you're from Edinburgh, born and raised in Edinburgh?
Yeah, born and raised in Edinburgh, dying breed. Not many of us left still in Edinburgh.
I was going to say, are we not outnumbering you now, us English lot? Are we not trying to take over in there?
Yeah, it seems to be the sort of like the wealthy of the world, as you say, particularly sort of south of English. Home now, and I rarely sort of meet people who born and bred in the city and still live here. So it's a bit of a strange one to be honest. But it's nice that people love the city and want to live here. It's privileged to have grown up here.
Do you know what? It's a gorgeous city as well, genuinely, and we've had this conversation kind of, in real life as well. But I absolutely love Edinburgh. It's one of my favourite places in the UK by a country mile. In fact, I would say arguably in the world. And now that I'm fortunate enough to work up there, I remember this is true. Waking up and having a Greg's bacon and sausage bap in front of Edinburgh Castle. I mean, what more do you want? Sat on Princess Street. I mean, genuinely, exactly. The whole city's beautiful. It really is, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it's totally unique, and I think despite the fact that obviously, like a lot of cities around the world, you see the same shops, same like chain restaurants. That's happening in Edinburgh, but because of its very unique sort of landscape and buildings, it still retains a very sort of, a unique identity.
Love that, I love that. So let's find out a little bit about your identity. So, born in Scotland, this is a really weird, born into a family. I'm assuming you had a mum and dad growing up, is that right?
Yep. I did. I still have them as well. My dad's from Falkirk. Okay. He's a psychiatric nurse. Brilliant. And my mum was a care of the elderly nurse, and they met at nursing college.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. They're divorced now, so not so cute, but.
But the thought was there. They both took the Hippocratic oath. They both fell in love, and here you are as a result. So, are you? Is it just you, or have you got any siblings at all? Or
I've got an older brother who lives in Darlington.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What brought him down here?
Woman, I think. I think he lived in Kent first, and then met his partner of I think 10 years, and she got a job in Darlington and he moved up there with her.
Fantastic. So how was childhood for Fiona then? Did you have any kind of interest? What was school like? Tell us a little bit about the early years for yourself.
As I said, Edinburgh was pretty different back then. I grew up in an area called Dalry, Gorgie, which is where the mighty Jam Tarts, Heart of Midlothian, are based. And I went to nursery school down there, and then went to enjoyed primary school. Sort of just enjoyed going to the park with my friends, going on bikes, rollerblading, breaking bones. was obsessed with music, getting, Smash Hits magazine and try to figure out what single to get with my pocket money every week.
Right. Who did you have on your walls? Did you have the posters up on your walls? Who was?
Great question. So I think when I was in primary school, I loved Take That, which was obviously just standard for a girl in school at that time. But then I sort of grew out of them, and it was like I loved Blur.
Class.
Yeah, loved Blur. So then I think I had a Michael Owen poster that I'd cut out of some TV Hits or Smash Hits magazine as well. And yeah, it was a great decade. I think it's an interesting one from a Britain perspective of like being British, because when it comes to sort of the films that are being made, the music, there was representation across the board for the whole country. Yeah. And I think there was a bit of sort of social mobility in that decade, that people that were from working class backgrounds, it started to become a little bit sort of easier to feel like you were making your way in the world, and people I think saw a bit more of a comfortable life after what sounds like a really difficult time of the sort of late 70s and during the 80s. So I think there was a great identity in the country, at least, where I was growing up in Edinburgh. We had a lot of people from, first, second generation, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, but it was very much like a Scottish sort of culture that celebrated our, brothers and sisters of other countries and faiths. And it was just the social cohesion at that point. It was just brilliant. It was, and it felt so positive.
I think you're right. I think the 90s was all about culture, wasn't it? Culture was the powerhouse, wasn't it? I think you're right, and it really empowered the working class of Britain. I think it's fair to say, and I think that tells you in music. You mentioned Blur, and of course we know about Oasis. We know about all these kind of these working class bands for working class people, just kind of popped up out of nowhere, and there was a real movement, I guess, wasn't there?
That's right. Yeah. So I think if you compare that to today, I think that's why there's been such a revival in the 90s, and even young people that either don't remember the 90s or weren't even alive at that time seem to recognise something in that decade that they're trying to sort of recreate, or they wish they were there. And lucky for us, we were. That was really happy. I think as well, because there was obviously difficult things going on in the world. So there was the Yugoslavian war, and even though it was very small, like my parents always had the news on. My brother and I weren't like shielded from seeing what was going on in the world, so we were like aware of that and the genocide in Rwanda. And we had quite a lot of refugees from Bosnia coming to our school.
Wow, okay. So this is is this mid-90s, late 90s, around about that time?
That's right, yeah.
Which would have been very, for a high school in Edinburgh, that was probably unknown at the time, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so.
All people of different cultures and things, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we weren't. I mean, obviously, if you look at Glasgow has always been seen as the more sort of multicultural city in Scotland, and Edinburgh's seen as a bit more sort of wealthy or not as multicultural. So, yeah, it was just like, I think because everyone was so happy and confident in their own culture and felt like they were doing all right. The fact that lots of people came from a war-torn country, and they were women and children, really, from memory, it was, of course, why wouldn't we?
Why not?
Why wouldn't we?
And that goes back to that culture, doesn't it, at the time of the working class, and come on in, we're still...
That's right. We didn't feel threatened because we were, as I said, we were confident in our own culture that was still modern. We weren't looking back, like, there was all Britannia stuff, and, all that Union Jack became really like a fashion statement.
Yeah.
But it was, and the social cohesion, as I say, was there, that I think there wasn't that sort of threat that people felt they had to, they didn't feel threatened by it.
It's
They
really
didn't feel their livelihoods were threatened, they didn't feel their culture was threatened, or their place in society was threatened.
No, I think you're right, and we'll come on to that as we kind of move towards kind of where we are today. But I think you're
Yeah,
right, and I think that has a huge impact on where we are, where we're at today, I guess, and where
yeah,
society is. Good, bad, and other, really, isn't it? It's
yeah.
so yeah. So you're at school. You've got your Michael Owen poster on the wall. You're listening to a bit of Relight My Fire, and so when you're at school, what are you thinking about? What's your goals and aims? Is there anything that you really want to do with your life? Have you got anything that you have planned? What does that look like at that point?
I think in primary school, there's, every week there was something else that you wanted to do. Obviously, being a vet was probably one of them. But then I think being a lawyer as well was another thing. I just all the time there was something sort of different. But I suppose looking back, there were things that were more less corporate, that were more about sort of healing or caring.
Do you
And
think that came from your parents, with them both being kind of in?
definitely, yeah, I definitely think so. My granddad came from a family of socialists. There was a communist, and his brother, one of his brothers, was a communist. His mum was a suffragette, everything. So, yeah, as you say, my family really, looking back, completely inspired me. So then in high school, it was pretty difficult time, stuff going on at home, and I think first year grades were all right, but then by second year I don't know, I was getting my brother's personal CD player, getting a day saver and just going round on the bus all day. I just don't know, I just couldn't face school and just the whole environment, I think. And I think that the sort of difficult thing about the positivity of that 90s decade and the new Labour and everyone going to university was that you sort of thought you could be anything. You were told you could be anything, and then I think when sort of obstacles come in your way, or you're starting to think, well, maybe I could be anything, but I can't be that, and I can't be that, and I can't be that, then you're going, well, you're feeling a bit, I don't know, you can be quite hard on yourself.
I think that's a really
Uh,
fair comment as well. I think
yeah,
you're right, because I remember seeing Tony Blair and what was it, D-Ream, things can only get better. And everybody thought, oh, the world's rosy, and all of a sudden, and
yeah,
everything's going to be great, and we got rid of those Tories, and the world's easy now, and blah, blah,
yeah,
blah. And I think you're right. And I think for those first couple of years, I think it was all right. I think
yeah,
that positivity kind of carried us on a wave. But I think you're right. I think the realism of life kind of sharp came at lots of us in that age category, from maybe, I don't
yeah,
know, people aged between 12 to 20, maybe within that period.
yeah,
And actually, you were right. We can't all just go off to university and do this. And we can't
yeah,
just all start a business, because actually we haven't got the tools. And so I think the idea was there, and I think everything was a good intention, but I think it almost went a bit too far in those times. I think
yeah. Definitely, and I think that's I'm 38, so I think people my generation, and I can see younger, in our generation, the same, that we're incredibly hard on ourselves, because we were sold something, we were sold a big dream, and actually, as you say, the reality of that's not really turned out the way that, that we thought it would.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, well, I won't go into sort of details, but things were really, really difficult, and I was seeing a school counsellor, and then at 12, 13, I was admitted to a young people's unit. It's a psychiatric unit, part of the Royal Ed Hospital, and at that time, I mean, you're going 2000, 2001.
How old are you now? Feel about you 16 at this point ish, 15, 16 are you or?
But young, yeah, I was about sort of 2001, 2002, I would have been 13, 14
Wow, that's a
age.
lot for a young person to deal with, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's a lot.
yeah. And I think, as I say, there was stuff that's hereditary in my one side of my family. Um, but then, yeah, I think at that time it was not really spoken about, or at least, like, I think because where I went to school as well was there was a lot of people that, there's the cutthroat catchment area battles in Edinburgh, and so there was a lot of people that maybe in my school could have afforded to go to private school, but they managed to get into this school without, obviously, a state school. And I think the school liked that idea of itself as being a very, nicey,
Yeah.
well behaved, state school where people could then go on and, do work for amazing organisations and go abroad and all the rest of it. But like for the rest of us, it was if you were sort of average or, you
Yeah.
know, um, below average, it was just you're cramping our style of it, really.
I,
So yeah, the shame. I think there was a lot of shame, and people wondered why I was going out of the class for certain things or not going into classes. I had to drop some periods, and I think because I wasn't someone that sort of kicked off, like
yeah.
didn't get in loads of fights or like would shout in a classroom or make a fuss, that um, I think it was probably a surprise to people.
It's it's tough. It's tough. That's tough
Yeah,
though. Right? It's a lot you've been through. But the comment I was going to make was, in those times, and it's probably unfamiliar territory to lots of younger people now. But mental health wasn't a thing. It wasn't a
no,
thing that was spoken about anyway. It wasn't like we didn't
yeah,
have social media, so things didn't get spread as like they do now anyway, messages or communications in any way.
yeah.
But mental health was you were kind of seen as, and I hope you don't take offence in this, but
No,
if you were talking about mental health, you were seen as one of those people who was in a straitjacket in a hospital down the road, and that
yeah,
was
yeah. You're
it was
crazy.
yeah, like
Yeah,
or you might hear the story of somebody's mum is a bit depressed and she's on happy pills. That's about as far as you would get.
that's right. Yeah,
We just didn't know anything and we didn't talk about things, and it was yeah, I guess that came from a little bit of the culture as well. It was a bit of a stiff up the lip and let's just
yeah,
get on with it. Did
yeah.
you kind of feel like that a little bit, or?
Yeah, I think as well, as I say, like the people that I grew up around, and even in my own family. I mean, like my mum was adopted,
Mm,
and she went through a lot of challenges. I mean, her adoptive parents are awesome, like, and probably two of the greatest inspirations of my entire life.
oh,
But that doesn't necessarily make that like 100% easy for
yeah,
my mum, and so, but still there was that, as you say, the culture, like keeping up with the Joneses and
yeah,
all of that, and you hear stories of people, they had siblings with a learning disability,
mm,
and the mum just basically, social work or support agencies or whatever, that's not for us, and the mum just doesn't work and just stays at home, and they like nobody talks about this,
yeah,
like this person in our family, and I suppose it wasn't as bad as that when I was a kid, but yeah, it was really difficult, and as you say, there was that, like, oh, you're crazy.
yeah.
Weirdly, it was a bit of a fashion statement when I was in high school for a certain, like, sort of group would be, oh yeah, I'm so, it's a sort of thing.
With Marilyn Manson hoodie on
That's
and
it, exactly. But as soon as they're faced with somebody who's
yeah,
actually in a psychiatric
yeah,
unit,
yeah,
or been told, then they're like, oh shit, that person's crazy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it was, I remember, as I say, I left school when I was 15, 4 standard grades, and I tried to get a job in Morrison's, and I said, I can't, they had this one of my addresses obviously was the young people's unit, and they asked about it, and I couldn't go on a Wednesday, couldn't work on a Wednesday because I had this, session, asked me questions about it. Then they said, oh, you're going to be off sick too much and you can't not do a Wednesday, so we can't give you a job.
You know what, they wouldn't do that this day and age, would they?
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's just, it's so, because it's not that long ago. I'm only talking, what,
No.
25 years ago? I mean, it's not that long ago at all, 20 years ago even. That's
so I just sort of, and again, the shame of not really knowing what I was going to do. Like, I didn't want to just be defined like that. Like, and because, as I say, I always thought about my grandparents, and they always were at the end of the phone, tell me I was brilliant, no matter like how I felt about myself or how anyone else like thought about me. So I felt like a real responsibility to try to do something. And so, yeah, it was difficult.
Tough. So how did you get yourself out of that situation? So kind of as you made your way towards your 20s, Morrison's had told you that you can't work here because they're idiots. So kind of, where did you go from there then? What did the next kind of part of your life look like?
Well, when I was younger, I liked sort of some creative stuff, and I liked playing like music, and so I tried to think. I had support from someone at the young people's unit, tried to talk me through what my options would be, and because I didn't really have somewhere stable that was like living, and sort of thought maybe college wasn't the best thing. I just wanted to go and get a job, and so we talked about me working in a kitchen, and yeah, it was life changing for me. Because it was creative, depending on where you work, obviously you could just be a fryer, chef or whatever, but like the camaraderie in a kitchen, sometimes obviously there's lots of issues around that, depending on where you work, it can be a complete opposite of that, it could be horrible, but when it's done right, there's creativity, physical work I think is really good for the brain. You come home and you're tired, so you have that like feeling like you've done hard work, that if you have a bit of an overactive brain, like that's super helpful, I think. And I didn't have to constantly, be the face of anything and interact with like customers, and which I at that age anyway found really, really difficult. And times when I was not feeling well, really.
So
I
which
felt better going to work.
So which was this a restaurant in Fiona, was it, or?
Yeah, I worked in, the first place I worked was a hotel, and wasn't there that long, but then I worked in a restaurant in the centre of Edinburgh, and I was there for 2 years, and that was just it. Yeah, that was what I did, and people were like, "Oh, you're a chef," it gave me a bit of confidence, and to actually have skills as well. Because having left school with not very much, it felt good to have proper skills I could use, and was easy to tell people what I was doing. You know what I mean.
So you kind of early 20s here, or still late teens at this point when you kind of
early 20s. It was just usually just a ragtag bunch of folk in a kitchen from Scots, English, Italians. Obviously, this was before we left the EU, so Romanians, Hungarians, Polish, and I just loved that. And we had the music on, some music obviously better than than others, and there was a buzz when it was busy that the checks, start coming down, and sometimes someone calling sick, and then it's just you, and you're working with maybe one other person, but you work well together. And as I say, it's not always like that in a kitchen. It can be a terrible environment, but I've been lucky that I haven't really had so much of that.
And I guess that really helps with life skills, doesn't it? In terms of, you've mentioned quite a few already, but just that building that camaraderie, being able to work with different people from different backgrounds, you maybe not used to. And I think you're right. I think that physical aspect as well, being on your feet for the majority of your day, these jobs are totally. It's funny actually, without getting on a soapbox, but society, young people in society, are seen not to want to do these jobs these days. Now that might be an incorrect statement. They might want to, that's fine, but they're seen to not want to do these jobs. But for me, these types of jobs are the types of jobs that sow the seed in the rest of your life.
Exactly, and I think that we have to take some responsibility for why they don't want to potentially do these jobs, and that's because they're undervalued.
Yeah.
And we can get into loads of conversations about like carers as well, the responsibilities that they have, and the fact that they're paid 20p over minimum wage. I think that's how can we expect young people to want to do these jobs? They've been undervalued for a long time.
Yeah, you're right. And also the golden ticket is in everybody's faces. Actually, you don't need to do this hard work because you can. Apparently, the golden ticket's easy for everybody now, isn't it? You can go off and do whatever, be a podcaster, be a YouTube, whatever it is, and it's an easy win. And that's what society has kind of made people think, and it goes back to a little bit. Actually, what we talked about in the 90s, and everything was going to be easy. I think we've regressed a little bit, and I actually think younger people in particular seem to think that not life's easy, but that there's easy ways to get to the top, and actually it's just not going to happen for everybody, is it?
No, and then you're missing out, it's like when you go to those careers advice when you're at school, you just left school. I went to one, and it was like, obviously because I was a girl, I had to be work in a nursery or be a hairdresser. That was my two options, and if you'd gone along you would have been a bricklayer or like a scaffolder or something, and that's the only thing that options you've got. But they used to always say about those transferable skills, and I think that it is that, and like you were saying earlier as well, it's a terrible term that we use, and particularly in this sector, but the soft skills bit that mean that you can learn to work in loads of different places when you have those, and those are the ones that are undervalued. And I think when people want to get from 0 to 100 without reaching any stops, they'll miss out on all of that.
You're right, it's so valuable, so valuable. So you were chefing, loving that obviously, really enjoying it. Kind of what was the next step for you then? So you were enjoying this kind of role and enjoying this lifestyle, I guess. Where did that kind of go from there for you?
I think it was very physical, obviously, and there's a culture of Friday, Saturday, or whenever there's been a busy time, you get a staff drink, and then that leads to you're finishing at whatever time, and you have a staff drink, and then you move on, and then you go out, and I mean, nobody could afford to do that now because it's about £8 for a pint in Edinburgh, but that's what you used to do, go out and then come home, couldn't switch off, and then you've got work in 5 hours and all that. And I went to Berlin for my 27th, 28th birthday.
Amazing.
And my birthday's in January, so it was Baltic and everything was shut, but it was amazing. But anyway, I looked in the mirror, I looked like absolute garbage. And I think because again, when you rent, and this isn't sort of sob story bit, this is just the nature of a lot of people's lives, that we can't afford to have a mortgage or whatever, so you rent, and you're not really relaxing. I don't think you've really got that rest, and when your job's really physical and you're not able to really switch off somewhere, it takes its toll. And I thought, this isn't a job that I'm going to be able to do for a long time, and with the fact I don't have any savings or anything, I need to find something like a long-term plan. And so I think it was February 2015 that I found a position at, it was a homelessness resettlement unit, or people might call it a hostel, run by Bethany Christian Trust, just for a cook, and it was part-time, but I thought, well, it's a great opportunity, and I was renting a room and stuff, so I thought I've had no money and I've been in debt and whatever, I'll probably be able to handle it. So I got the job, and I just came with the idea that, like, I think it was a maternity leave cover post, and I think it's a role that isn't common in these places. Usually people don't get food provided for them. So I think there'd been a bit of a like sort of school dinners type like food that had been put there. Like I'd seen bags of like scone mix and crumble mix and stuff like that, and so I just thought, well, it's actually really easy for me anyway to do restaurant quality food, and obviously big trays of stuff or big pots, because there was 40 residents, and I was cooking for the staff members as well, because they would all eat together, and it was important that was part of it. So
for you, coming from it must have been very different coming from a restaurant background with a pretty big team around you and the social aspect, to kind of being a bit of a lone wolf, I'm guessing, in this scenario.
Well, it's interesting you should say that. I was actually in my head when I was thinking about this experience, that this went in my favour in terms of, like, I was able to connect with people in ways that the key workers weren't able to. For one thing, I'm interested in like spirituality and stuff, and in terms of like religion and faith. I'm interested in the history of people, trying to make sense of our human reality, and our human reality being different from the sort of ultimate or just actual reality, because everything's human, man-made or whatever, and the idea of like the Jesus figure, if you're looking at Christianity. I love that story, but there's been things about that I don't really like sort of believe in or whatever, but I see value in aspects of it.
That's the key, isn't it? Do you know what, right? Very funny. I had this conversation with somebody just the other day, and I was talking about, I'm not particularly religious, and I do have some beliefs. I'm not really spiritual, but my big argument is, I don't really care what you believe in. You can believe in fairies that sit on the end of your bed every day, and whatever, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if that's what gets you through the day, and that's what helps you out, and that's what gives you hope, gives you confidence, whatever that might be, then do you know what? Good for you. Crack on.
Yeah, that's it. And that's, I think we get into that point, and I think, again, this is something that's created animosity, this Islamophobia sort of discussion, is because we've really, because of the nature of the way that the church has behaved, and its sort of very literal or moralistic interpretation of the Bible and everything, that has really destroyed some people. Like, we, especially in Scotland, we have a very like strict sort of Church of Scotland. Everyone wears black and don't get divorced and all that sort of stuff, and that's been people's experience. So I think that we've, as a culture, have just gone, no, like, that's bad, and how can anyone believe that somebody, the world is only 2,000 years old or whatever, and then you find out that's actually, a lot of Christians don't believe that, and whatever, but I think that we need to separate in sort of church and an establishment from faith, and using that as a framework for like centering yourself and all the rest of it, and that's something I learned there, because I was very much like, what the but again, I had my eyes opened when I worked there, just to see that separation, and then start to understand it as I say, a framework to constantly like reflect on how you interact with the world. I saw real value in it, so it was a lot of learning. But then obviously working with residents, it was sometimes, it's going to sound really kooky again now talking about spiritualism, but I don't know if you've had this experience, but when you see really sort of basic beauty of humanity, and I think we get away from this in this sector now, where it's very, structured or certain languages, we hear the same we do a person centre, blah blah, and you're like, oh god, I'm just blah 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 blah, but then when you're in some situations and you just see it's stripped back, none of that nonsense, and it's people just if you're interested in somebody and you're being yourself around that person, and it gives them license or the space to be themselves around you, and they see that you care about who they are, and you see then if everyone feels that way, the way they then interact with each other as a result of that, the whole environment's changed.
Yeah,
and there was times there where it was just like, I don't know, weird sort of slow motion. I just stood there sort of looking at everybody and just thought, that is just the most amazing, beautiful thing. And as I say, I think we need to really sort of get back to basics on some of these things. And for me personally, it wasn't about that I'm here to help people. It was that recognition that they showed me something in myself where I'd always felt like a problem child in the family, or, with a couple of friends I had were constantly, having to try to make me feel comfortable or whatever. And here was people I'd never met before who had no responsibility to me whatsoever. And I felt like I could be part of a solution rather than a problem person. And
I love that.
I was just,
it's empowering, isn't it?
One of the most amazing experiences, in fact, I probably would say the fundamental experience in my life, really.
And doesn't that just show you what to what many would see as such a small change, going from to taking on a part-time role in a homeless organisation and just having conversations, that is fundamentally probably changed your life and potentially, without getting too out there, but maybe saved your life to some point because it's given you that little bit of meaning. I think
that's right.
It's very valuable, isn't it? It's just all about moments, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think the reciprocal thing is, just a beautiful thing, really. And so when, as I say, I thought I was going to get my P45 because it was a maternity leave post, and I just started looking how could I sort of transfer this into maybe other places. And I don't even remember how I found the concept of social enterprise. I found it somewhere and just emailed everybody I could find, and even managed to get to speak to someone from the council that probably I had no business really speaking to. And
that's obviously been your drive, though, hasn't it? All of a sudden, it's almost been your light bulb moment, hasn't it? It's do you know what? I've been through some challenges. I've had some really tough times. I've seen the world a little bit. I've spoke to lots of people. I've now got all of this knowledge. I've come to this organisation. I've made somebody's day a little bit better just by having a conversation or making a nice meal. Actually, okay, now the engine started. How do we carry on the train up the tracks?
That's it.
Yeah. And that's what it feels like. It's just invigorated you at this point. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it was almost like, I don't know what I was just running on. I don't know. I think as well, obviously, I had a background of having to price items on menus and understand how the business worked of a kitchen, and then actually having experience working with people, rather than sometimes you get people in charities or social enterprises where they've got one or the other, and very rarely both. So I think that went in my favour as well. And it was everything I touched turned to gold. Good. It was everything, I got startup funding from First Port to test an idea.
So was this at this point, Fiona? Had you started your own project at this point? Is that right? Or?
That's right. Yeah. So
tell us a little bit about that. So you were working at the homeless organisation.
Yeah.
And then you were looking for things. You were looking at social enterprise, and then what was the next step in your journey, I guess?
So I just started to look at what I might put together as a project. Would it be something that I would just be doing once a week, or ever. And I suppose to begin with, that's what I had in my mind. And it took different forms. So I think when I went to Firstport for startup funding, obviously they helped me put together what a business plan would look like and everything.
That must have been completely, alien to you. You must have been thinking, what on
Yeah,
earth is this
I've never
stuff?
done anything like financial projections and all that stuff. I've never done it before. Funding, all of that. Obviously that's what 10, 11 years ago now. I'd never, done any of that stuff. As I say, I could cost a menu item, and that was like about it. And so the first thing I did was these sort of community meals, and it was a payment system where it was like some people went and it was free, some people paid a discount, and some people paid full price. But it all went through online, so nobody knew what, who had paid or not paid what. Everyone sat together, and there was bands and poets and stuff. And so the guys from the hostel came up to support, and which was amazing. And people from other hostels, local people, folk that I just met from, talking about different sort of challenges in Edinburgh with regards to like affordable place to eat, but also in the homelessness sort of sector as well. So it was great. And then I just started to think, well, maybe I should go back to looking at really what I was doing before at Bethany, and just trying to replicate that was probably a better idea. And so I went to speak to, I was like the Pied Piper, sort of like, honestly, I worked with all of these organisations, so on, I think it was the January after I set things up that I got offered like £700 or £800 a month from Rock Trust to do regular sessions and stuff with their young people. And so that was it. I didn't have to work elsewhere. I just thought, I'm just going to go for it. And I was renting a room in this lass's flat in a cabin bed, no less. And yeah, that was me. And then I started to speak to different sort of cafes and restaurants and in the area, see if they needed any sort of baking or whatever. And after doing the sessions, I would finish at 7 o'clock at night. Some ones I would start first thing in the morning, and then I would be up until like 10 o'clock baking in this person's deli that they allowed me to use after hours. And then go home and start doing some sort of like typing up stuff that I'd done that day, and like reports and everything, and up again the next day for the same the same.
So at this point you're about 2017, 2018, is that about right, year-wise?
That's right, and I mean...
Were you a kick, or were you just
I was a company limited by guarantee, okay. But obviously the Articles of Association would say that basically, obviously, if it folded or decided to end the organisation, that it would go to community, which would be either like local people or most likely organisations that had the same sort of aims. So that's how I did it. So
the business was obviously going all right. You were getting paid a little bit of money. Did you have any staff? Just kind of or?
Yeah. So what? It was, again, as I say, everything I touched turned to gold. So I got Build It, I think, money, which paid a salary for me for a year. Brilliant. And it was supposed to then mean that I could just focus on the social enterprise. And then I got on the Big Issue Invest programme, and that was, I think, 50 grand of investment, social investment. Yeah. There was obviously a program in that you would get a mentor and any sort of support, and yourself, it's really difficult to try to do this like whilst you're trying to run something.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of would you like to go to this networking event, would you like to do this or that, and I'm like, I don't have the time, I don't have.
But people don't get that, do they? People are always like, yeah, you can do this and you can learn about accountancy, or you can do your social media, and you're like, hang on a minute, I'm like a hamster running in a wheel, I'm running and running and running.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, like it's not only because you're delivering, you're recruiting, you're resourcing, you're doing everything, aren't you?
You're doing absolutely everything, and so I think that's something that I mean, I know yesterday we sort of I sent you something, and something that this person had written this post, I think 8 months ago or something. And when I think you and I have had this discussion about defining a social enterprise, and I think that when you're a charity that has social enterprise activities, that we need to separate that from a social enterprise, which, as you say, is either a KIC or company limited by guarantee. So the reason being, well, there's multiple reasons, but the thing that when you're a social enterprise, you embody the whole thing. And you'll say, we do this, we do that, and even when you get employees, like I employed one person who was supposed to take off some of this sort of on the ground stuff, didn't work out, and some young people who had worked with through sort of the Rock Trust, that people still want you, because there's a lot of stuff going around. It's your practice, it's the way that you connect with people, and also with me cooking as well, that it was like the ideas I had, I wasn't doing your usual lentil soup and whatever, everything was made like from scratch. It was supposed to be stuff that was just like easy enough to do, or I would structure a session that, like, if somebody was low in confidence or whatever, they would just put the cherry on top, but the cherry on top would look freaking amazing. And they would be able to showboat, right? I might have done most of the steps of the thing with them, but the bit at the end, the presentation bit at the end, that's the confidence bit. That's the bit where then everyone's like, oh, that looks amazing. You're thinking about this. You're thinking where to bring people in. So there's so much of you in everything. And then when you speak to funders, when you speak to potential partner organisations, it's you. And I think that, when I tried to employ, it was different with obviously the young people, because they came in at a bit where, to be honest, they had probably been part of the whole build of what, the organisation. So they did sort of get it. But, other people from the outside, people were just like, we don't want them, we want you. and you thought they got it, but they didn't, and it's so much pressure. It's almost like you put yourself completely naked on a stage out there, and you're not allowed to have your own challenges, like, or you're just, it's assumed that you have like a really stable sort of background, that, you've had this amazing career and you've got loads of cash and you're doing this thing because it's a nice thing to do, whereas that's really not the case. The people that I've met in this sort of space, when it's actual social entrepreneurs who are, as I say, running these very small organisations, trying to make it sustainable, being told, well, you shouldn't use funding because you're a social enterprise, then maybe getting funding to start up or to grow, but then the social impact expectations are beyond possible for one person to achieve while still trying to, make an income. Yeah. And it's it's a lot of pressure. I think as well that, and it's not anyone's fault because they're only trying to do their job, but they obviously come with their own agendas and they don't see you as the person. They see you as trying to, they see you as a means to fit their own aims. And I don't think that necessarily comes from a nasty place. They know that they're doing it, but it can feel that way and you're kind of pulled in all directions. And then add on to that, obviously you're potentially like employing people or running groups with people that have that opportunity because of you as a human being. Obviously they've put their own work into that, but then ultimately like either nobody's seen something in them that's there to provide the opportunity for them to showcase themselves, or you've played a part in actually that being there in the first place, and so you know that, and you know that if you were to step away, if this was to go down the toilet, that so many people would be affected. Even though it's just you that's really at the heart of everything.
I mean, you had some great successes. I mean, I was looking over your back catalogue of awards. I mean, very briefly, talk us through some of those some of those awards and accolades you picked up along the way, because you must be proud of that.
I think like by year 3 was the first social enterprise, not as I say charities, like social enterprise, to operate out of a NHS Lothian building. So we got given a sort of cafe space in their training centre in Edinburgh, and it was part of the, I think, 2019 Big Issue Top 100 change makers. And then weirdly enough, I was looking for an article, was it a year and a half ago, and then found out I'd been nominated for the Scottish Women's Awards under Social Entrepreneur. But obviously at that point, well, I haven't gone into this yet, but my organisation didn't exist at that point, so obviously they couldn't find me to tell me that was the case.
So your successes came, I mean, various times, but when was this particular award? Is this 2019, 2020, or before then?
Yeah, I think it was 2020.
The COVID years, of course.
That's the COVID years, yeah. So trying to think about the timings of everything. But yeah, I think obviously, as I say, that organisation doesn't exist anymore. But when I look back, and I think that people saw something in what I was doing and how I could do things, and believed in the overarching sort of mission of it. And I think that like we can put ourselves forward for awards and everything, but I think that's a huge achievement for everyone involved in this space. To, in a noisy, really noisy world where there's lots of duplication, there's lots of information out there, that somebody can, a humble person can come up with something and just be able to connect with people on such a level that, as I say, they're like the Pied Piper. They're just like, people collect people, they're walking at this, and only suddenly more and more people are following them, and they don't see themselves as a leader. So I suppose when I spoke to you about doing this podcast and I was looking through everything, I thought like there's stuff that I just couldn't even conceptualize that I'm proud of about that, especially when I said that when I worked at Bethany and people said, well, this has been great for me, so I would like to support you to be able to access more people, and then them coming to support me, then them doing case studies for me to show as like that I had done what I'd done at Bethany, and that's not unique to me. Social entrepreneurs will have had that experience themselves, and that can never be like, I think that's the most amazing thing. And again, go back to that humanity, but the human dignity and the fact that like social entrepreneurs often through all of adversity like create something like this, and there's something in them that I don't know where the energy comes from, like, you know what I mean? And it is just like, it's
Do you know
like,
what I would say though? I would say that you're very humble and it's
yeah,
amazing, but actually you should
thank
be
you,
really, really proud, Fiona, because what you've
thank you.
built and what you achieved, yeah, fair enough, it might not have turned out the way you wanted to in the end, but that's due to many reasons,
Yeah,
which, fine. But, if you look back at where you started, look back at the challenges you had as a young kind of female growing up in
yeah,
Glasgow, you look back at those small wins, or what might have been seen as
yeah,
small wins at the time at the housing organisation, and then look at what you did, the fact that you were like the Pied Piper, like, do you know what, like that's awesome, man. Like,
thank
do
you.
you know, I hope that you sometimes reflect on that, because actually,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about with awards, and
yeah,
it's not the be all and end all sometimes, but actually you should be proud of those things because you've achieved so much. Like, and you're right. I think lots of social entrepreneurs have this almost imposter syndrome that lives with them forever
that's right.
because
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I'm not a business person. I'm not this. I'm not that.
Yeah,
But you know what? Doesn't matter what you are. Doesn't matter what the label is.
yeah,
You've done it and you've helped people, and actually, ultimately,
that's
that's what matters, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. They're almost like, as I say, although we're saying about the challenges of embodying that, like they're the story,
Yeah.
and there's positives and negatives in that. But as I say, when you just look at, yeah, you're right. I can look back at my own life and think, how the hell did that happen? I don't, where was that coming from? How was I even powered? When I look back, I'm like, even just to think of that, looking that big rucksack around and stuff, like, I don't even know how I then got back at whatever, 10 o'clock at night after baking some stuff and still doing an application or something, and it's just like incredible. And to think that I've had that experience, yeah, is amazing.
I love it.
Um,
So obviously the organisation came to an end. I mean, if you
yeah,
might want to touch on that a little bit, but
yeah,
kind of how does that bring you to the modern day? So obviously COVID happened.
yeah.
I'm just guessing here, but that might have had an impact on the organisation kind of finishing. Is that right, or is that not right? Tell us a little bit about
Yeah, so as obviously we talked about my sort of background with like mental illness and stuff,
that.
and I hadn't really felt like a problem. It just was really manageable, and then I think like that false, or maybe not false sense, but that sense of just like being untouchable and just being able to keep going and everything working. It like had a. It meant that I never stopped and thought like you need to look after yourself. Maybe like you need to start to slow down, because everything was still working out. So I just ended up just having serious burnout, and I was back in. Yeah, I was going to work really. I shut the door. I didn't have my bag, didn't have my keys. I was just like, yeah, it was. I just wanted out. I think I got to the point where I just somebody take this away from me, because there'd been stuff happening. Like people passed away or whatever. I felt that hadn't been there, and I was living with a lot of guilt. And you start to reflect that maybe it's easier to like be part of like supporting other people that aren't connected to you, but then you haven't actually been there for people that you're like responsible for. So what I did was, and this was coming up to the pandemic, start of the pandemic, I had just for 2 weeks I had a mentor from that Big Issue program called Jan, who was amazing. She would just give me everyone's phone numbers, no one's to contact you, after had 2 weeks rest, and then I worked with her and a guy from First Port that I'd worked with the whole time. I was from start of the organisation that I had called Prep Table, and we looked at how I could move on, and came up with a business sort of proposal plus like an advert. Yeah, it was really that I could go to. We picked 3 organisations and said like this is all the assets. This is, would you be interested in taking it? And I think just had to sort of explain to them, and again, it was really. To be so vulnerable in front of all those people, and to know that like the people that I employed, a couple of them were not like okay with me sort of leaving, and those I don't know where those people are now, and the relationships are just beyond repair because they felt totally rejected, I think, and left, and that's really difficult, because I get they didn't, they knew that they were always like, are you okay, because I obviously was not functioning very well, and they were caring, but I think ultimately when it came to me saying I'm not doing this anymore, they were scared, and so words were had, things they said to me, and it was really hard. So anyway, I had done some work with Scran Academy, a lot of people will know, and at this point they had a CEO who was the founder, but he, because of the size of the operation, he wasn't sort of needed to be around that often. Then they had a youth worker and a part-time chef. And that's all they had. And I just really liked the grassroots work that they were doing. They were just down the road from where the cafe was, and I thought, well, you've got, hopefully this will mean that they've got something sustainable that they could start to build a bit more. And so it was agreed. They were happy. I spoke to their board, and they signed off. They would take the donation, which their founder really kindly said it wanted it to be a merger, and it went out in the papers that we'd merged, and I stayed on the board as a trustee. But before we merged, actually the pandemic broke out, and so it was a very delayed sort of merger. So I just helped, obviously. I was still put out there as the CEO of Prep Table and everything, but I started to do more work for them behind the scenes to try to get their infrastructure up so that the merger would be more beneficial to them. I made their connections with NHS and all that, and I cooked a lot, obviously, during the pandemic. And then when the first lockdown lifted, we finally announced, and I could step back from that.
Wow, so that's definitely a journey. In fairness, that's a lot you've been through, and people talk about resilience and how in business people need to use certain coping strategies and what have you. But actually, for social entrepreneurs, there's not really that element of support, I think, to provide that bit of resilience. And I think that's we've talked about that is possibly missing, because you're just seen as this one person operation, leading the kind of the Pied Piper type of role, and you're doing all this good, but actually there's nobody really there to support you, and that's tough, isn't it?
That is, yeah. And I think there's obviously huge sort of infrastructure organisations. There's a lot of money that gets put into really good intentions, like, people, as I say, running seminars or, doing consultancy stuff or whatever. But I think it's such a lonely place to be. And sometimes you just I just want someone to come in and just do it all. Someone who's just going to come in here and understand, ask me some questions, then basically get their head around the whole shebang, and then, just do some work for me that's going to save me some time and effort in the long run. And I've met a lot of social entrepreneurs that have said the same, and people that they feel like a sort of a failure when their business ends, and I think that whilst there's loads of extra pressures on like social enterprises, I feel like there's still a model that we could look to make work. And I think it's still the ultimate, the ultimate dream. But how do we look after people, the founders of the organisations, more? And, is this too radical? But instead of funding lots of networks and stuff, can we just give the money to them to pay themselves to, I think there's a lot of complicated ways of supporting and funding and lots of like strategies. This is our government strategy for blah, blah, blah. And sometimes I just think, just pay people. Just strip it back. Just pay that person and then, pay somebody else to do this other function. And actually that's probably what some people need, But
I guess we're coming at the end now, but I think just a couple of kind of questions before we kind of wrap on kind of where you're at today. But the question I always ask is, what would you say has been your kind of, you've obviously had a lot of turmoil, you've had some great wins as well, but what's been that moment, that scrambled egg moment where you think, actually, this wasn't going so well and this is the change I needed to make and this is what it looked like? What would be that particular moment for yourself?
I think I do think that maybe the idea of having an organisation was something that if I wasn't so wet behind the ears, maybe wouldn't have looked to do that. And I think maybe just me going around with my rucksack, having a job, and then, maybe I would have still worked at Bethany and gone around with the rucksack to other places, in the other days of the week. I think that, I don't regret anything because I had a huge, amazing experience, but I think that maybe allowing myself to be so naive or not trusting my own sort of gut instincts and thinking I had to grow and grow and grow, and that I think has been sort of part of my to my detriment.
Yeah, but I think that's part of your identity as well, isn't it? And I think that's added to layers to you, hasn't it? And that's something that you now pass on, isn't it? And something that you try and encourage other potential social entrepreneurs. Is that right?
Yeah, that's something that I've absolutely loved since I left my organisation, is that having met people in really their difficult times, I've enjoyed doing some freelance work and being that person just to come in and be the right-hand woman that I wish I'd had. And because I have done, as you know yourself, when you set something and run something up yourself, you'll scrub the toilets, you'll, put some flyer together, you'll do financial modelling, you'll, do a multi-year funding application, you'll set up a CRM tool or whatever, but you're just whatever that person needs, but also you get it, and hopefully, I think people have said, this is one thing that doesn't sound humble maybe, they feel the people I've worked with, I've said they felt safer knowing I'm there. That's even good. When I've said, look, I feel like I've done everything that I can now, I'm going to step back, I said, but I feel safer because you're there. And I think, everyone, every social entrepreneur needs that person.
That support mechanism. Love that. I love that. And I guess the kind of final kind of question is what was your kind of golden egg moment then? So what's your kind of top tip? And you've kind of talked about lots of hints and tips, which I'm sure lots of people can take away, but what would you say is your golden egg? What would you say is your top tip that you can give to any social entrepreneur, potential social entrepreneur, or somebody who just wants to do good? What would you give them as that piece of advice?
Yeah, I guess like you say, that stripping it back, and what we have as social enterprises, social entrepreneurs, is actually the people will say, oh, nobody knows what we do, nobody knows the difference between a social enterprise and a charity, and people like charities can do no wrong, but social enterprises, and that's true. That is a lot of the perception. I accept that, but from the positive, we can innovate in ways, that charities can't. When you're dictated to, by big funders, by the public sector, and this isn't, people's faults. If you're working with young people, you need to work through the, local authorities. That just happens, and it's very difficult to sort of change their the lens. But as social enterprises, we can pick and choose a bit more, and that allows us to innovate. And we should quietly or loudly maybe be that example of, instead of this, activist thing where we're constantly saying, oh, public sector's rubbish, funders are rubbish, we have the freedom to show what's possible, and a really great alternative. Yeah. And so I think that that's what I would say to social entrepreneurs, to always remember that and to focus on that, and to try not to be swayed to relinquishing that,
Remember the why, isn't it?
That's it, exactly. And that separation, when you meet people who've been institutionalised and they see you outside those usual sort of structures, it allows you to build relationships with people that have been jaded and, they need a lot of trust building. But for social entrepreneurs, we've got a lot more scope to be able to do that. So, as you said, I think it's stripping it back, remembering who we are, and not to feel forced to over-commit yourself on the social side, because it's about the quality of what you're providing. And look after yourself, please.
No, I love that. I guess great. Thank you so much, Fiona. So many hints and tips in there, and that was great. I think you're completely right. So where are you at today then? Just to very briefly kind of summarise, what does Fiona Donaldson's life look like today after such a fantastic life, really? And you've been a brilliant social entrepreneur, and you're still having fantastic engagement and insight and support for that sector. So what does it look like today for you, and where do you hope to be in a few years' time? Are you still there?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you there.
Sorry. So in terms of kind of your journey, it's been fantastic, which is great. So where are you at now? Very briefly, where are you at now, and what does the next stage of your kind of, I guess, working life look like? What does that look like for you?
So at the moment, for the past 3 years actually, I've been involved in Edinburgh Giants Inclusive Sports Club. So that was set up as a community club, and I supported the founder, chair, coach to turn that into a SCIO, a Scottish charity. And he's an amazing person, Martin Gill, and I've been helping with sort of funding applications, but also looking at building the sort of social impact programs, projects. I did a research project on equity and inclusion in wheelchair rugby league, which is what Edinburgh Giants is sort of their main sport. We've done a lot of work with the players, disabled players, to have a forum, so they directly influence the way the club is run. So they work with the board. So it is, the sort of members of the club are involved in every aspect of the running of the club. So I've loved that, and it's been interesting working with someone from a sports but also sort of financial services business background, and seeing how he's probably doesn't realise it, but has been very innovative in the way that he's structured the organisation and made sure that the sort of core activities pay for themselves. And the funding that we're looking to access is based around sort of social projects rather than how the sort of general running of the club. So I've loved that. I've got was it 2 years ago finished, graduated University of Glasgow with as a Master of Education with adult learning, community development and youth work. And as someone who left school with 4 standard grades and doesn't have an undergrad, have my social enterprise experience to thank for that. I got onto that programme because of it. So, that's something I'm looking at sort of using more and more down the line. And as we've spoken about recently, looking to set up a collective of people that are experienced in the social enterprise world who want to be that right-hand person to a social entrepreneur. Looking at folk with a range of different skills, either from a business perspective or a human perspective. If you have counselling experience, that you identify with, founders of social enterprises, that you feel you could offer some sort of direct support to them for a period of time, or coaching or anything like that. But very much a independent collective of freelancers that would allow us to not be bound by sort of funders and stuff. So I'm looking to set that up at the moment. It's very early days. Just been connecting with people, reconnecting with people from my old life and sense checking it. But I do want to reach out to anyone if they want to have a discussion, if they're whether they're just interested to chat, or if they've got finding that they're coming into difficult times, or would like to be involved in a sort of movement about reimagining social enterprise and supporting founders. You can email me at Fiona Donaldson at protonmail.com, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So.
Brilliant. But you know what, Fiona, that's a perfect place to finish, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, I've taken up all of your time.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I think all that's left for me to say really is, and I mean this genuinely, first of all, thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for giving hope and inspiration and some ideas and some tips to anyone who's looking to get involved in the sector or who just wants to make a difference. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a good egg. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've loved it. Yeah, thanks. As I say, I'm sorry, I think I've gone way over your usual podcast time.
But no, thank you so much, Fiona, and brilliant. We'll see you at the next one. Take care. Cheers.
Cheers, pal. Bye.